Well, if you're just joining us, you're watching Docs on Call, and our guest tonight are therapists from Indiana Physical Therapy. We're here talking about Neuro Rehab Clinic, and if you'd like to jump on the phones are open now at 483-8331. Again, that number is 483-8331 if you have any questions. So, I know you both are involved in treating diseases or conditions along the autism spectrum. So let's go down that path. Tell me more about what role occupational therapy plays, and then we'll come to speech.
Okay, sure. All right. Well, in occupational therapy, what we look at is the child as a whole. We look at the way they take in the environment and then the way they respond to the environment. So sensory processing is a major issue, looking at how do their senses, you know, take in the visual, the auditory, the smells, the movement. A lot of times in autism, those kiddos are getting overstimulated and overwhelmed, and the only way they know how to cope with it is in what we look in from the outside, what seems inappropriate. However, to them is a very appropriate response to what message they're getting from the environment. So as an OT, I take a look at their sensory processing. I take a lot of parent report because they're the experts on their child, just knowing how they cope with the day and what their child calms with. Each child is very different on what movements calm them, what touch calms them. It might be a cartoon character or a figurine at the time, and it could change every day. So I just kind of take in all that background information, and after assessing their sensory processing, I talk with the parent, what are your main goals? What are the teacher's main goals? And then I let that guide our treatment. A lot of times with children on the autistic spectrum, they do have weak upper body strength. They have fine motor delays. They don't want to color. They don't want to write, use scissors. So we are doing traditional OT activities while we're addressing their sensory processing and tolerating everyday life.
So help me. So if I have an autistic child and we have a struggle getting ready for school in the morning, do you break it down into the tasks of, okay, here are the things we do in the bathroom, and here's how to make that an achievable goal?
Yes, yeah. Basically break everything down in small increments, minimize verbal cues, make them as simple as possible. A lot of times you want to pair a task with a simple visual picture, a picture schedule to help the child know this comes first, this comes second, this comes third. And a lot of that positive reinforcement and sensory reinforcement along the way, especially if dressing is very defensive. They don't like the tags, they don't want the clothes, they're too tight. So a lot of times a sensory preparation activity prior to getting dressed, you know, helps, such as beanbag chair time, or, you know, whatever activity the OT and the parent has figured out is regulating to the child. And then use that picture schedule to say, now we have to complete, you know, and then go through sequencing that way. And then let there be a reward after they've achieved that. But yes, the key is breaking things down simply and reducing the sensory input as much as possible. If you can dim the lights, turn off the TV, you know, those kinds of things that if they're overwhelming to the child. So, yes.
And tell me about your input with kids along that autism spectrum.
Well, for the speech pathology end of it, when kids are on the autism spectrum or they have Asperger's, the main thing we're looking at is their pragmatic skills. And pragmatic skills are social skills. So the skills we have for this conversation right now, somebody on the spectrum doesn't have. And while, you know, the child that develops normally, you know, gains those skills without specific direction or specific education on those. They just sort of, you know, gain them on their own.
It happens innately.
Right, exactly, yeah. So unlike that, we have to teach these children how to be social, how to greet people, you know, how to say hi when somebody walks in the room, how to ask questions of people, you know, how are you doing today? How to be concerned about other people. So we really look at the pragmatic end of communication. We also go into language quite a bit with kids that are on the autism spectrum, because there's usually a language impairment that comes along with it. So either the comprehension of language is impaired, or the expression of language can be impaired.
I can imagine that if I'm a parent struggling with that condition in my kids, having you two on the team has got to be a giant relief.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
A good sounding board, you know, to discuss those challenging situations. I think parents really rely on that just to encourage them along the way. Most parents, I mean, they are the experts in their child, so they usually come in with the right ideas. They just need a little bit of guidance and developing those home programs. So, yeah, yeah.
Let's move ahead to another set of conditions that I'm sure you touch on, and that are things like MS.
Sure.
And those conditions, Parkinson's. Tell me how the role that you might play there.
Well, with those degenerative conditions, what we try to maximize is their functional independence at that time. We assess, you know, where their levels are, what we can improve. Let's say we assess a weakness or a lack of coordination. So we start where they are and start our exercises at that point of tolerance. We do continue to try to build and advance the skills. There comes a point in those degenerative conditions where you do have to plan for the future and the decline of the future. So a lot of occupational therapy is also realistic and looking at the home or looking at those adaptations to make life easier, looking at the medical equipment that might be in their future, but definitely making those strides to develop a good, strong home program that they can do for stretching and range of motion and strengthening to maintain their joints for as long as possible and their coordination for as long as possible.
I never thought about that. So if I already have a physical deficit, then you're going to help me learn how to use a walker safely and effectively and translate and transition into a wheelchair, those kinds of things, right?
Right. When those declining points come, yes, we're there to help educate on the equipment and teach the proper usage, because just handing them a piece of equipment isn't going to get it done. But yeah, that training on the correct use and the proper techniques, and even training the family on proper body mechanics, proper lifting procedures, proper safety, because the caregiver in those degenerative conditions is going to be the one that, you know, that patient really relies on, and they have to stay healthy themselves. So it's a full family addressing partners and support system.
And are there speech consequences to both those conditions?
Oh, yeah, sure. There's two main things that we work on with speech, with Parkinson's and with MS. Basically, when the muscles get weaker for those conditions, they can have swallowing deficits. And they also can have what we call dysarthria, and that's slurred speech or quiet speech. So speech that it's there, but it's hard to understand. Especially with Parkinson's, the speech gets really, really soft. And so, you know, we take an approach to increase the amplitude or increase the volume of their speech and sort of retrain the brain to say, this is loud enough and I'm whispering here. You know, that sort of thing. And then when it comes to swallowing, again, it's strengthening the muscles as much as you can, or finding compensatory strategies for the swallow to be as safe as you can for as long as you can.
Let's get back out to the phones. And Michelle, you have a question for us tonight. Michelle, go right ahead.
Yes. My mom has had a stroke about 3 years ago, and she often complains about feeling of rubber bands being around the one side of her muscles. I was just wondering if it's a normal feeling for a stroke.
Were you able to hear that, Lauren?
I wasn't actually hearing all of it.
I think, Michelle, you said your mom has feelings of rubber bands around her muscles, almost constricting or holding her back?
Okay.
Yeah, it feels like her, she has rubber bands around the top of her feet and around the top of her arms, and I'm just wondering if that's a normal feeling after you have a stroke.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah. what she might be experiencing is that feeling of that higher muscle tone or tightness following a stroke. So those bands, it would definitely take more of a hands-on, face-to-face assessment with occupational therapy or physical therapy to completely determine. But I would say that description sounds like she's feeling that increased muscle tone or tightness, and that range of motion exercises and neuromuscular facilitation would be helpful in that case. So yeah, without seeing her, it's hard to say, but
sure.
Yeah.
Well, we've got to leave it there. We're almost out of time. Last thought, any major point you want to leave folks with tonight?
Well, basically at the Neuro Rehab Center, it's great because, you know, we have the OT and we have the speech and we have the physical therapy all under one roof. So if there is a problem that you or a loved one has that you're seeing in any sort of that realm, we're here to help. We treat ages 0 to 99, you know, so.
Plus. Yeah.
Plus.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Plus.
And I would say, yeah, just encourage, if you're having trouble in activities of daily living in any way, you want to live life to your fullest. So we're out there to help.
All right. Well, Carol Lowenstein and Lori Snodgrass, thanks for coming in this evening, and thank you for your questions tonight. If you'd like to get a hold of Indiana Physical Therapy, the phone number is 409, or rather, the number should be on your screen. There it is, 432-4700, or you can visit indianapt.com. Next time around, Dr. Samuel Corey from Corey High Tech and Cosmetic Dentistry is in. He'll be answering your questions about dental care. He always has the latest and greatest gadgets and knows how to use them well. So hope you'll join us for that episode of Docs on Call. And you can always watch the program online anytime you like. Just hit incnow.tv, look for the features page, and there you can click on Docs on Call. We'll see you next time around. Take care.